Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I'm joined by Demir Bentley, a new friend from Lifehack Bootcamp. Demir is a former burned-out tech CEO and Wall Street guy. He's a man after my own heart who has, basically had his office space moment and decided with his wife, Carey, to find a different way to be successful, a different way to approach life. So they created this thing called Lifehack Bootcamp, which I met them because I am part of their summit that's coming up in June, and we'll talk about that later, and we'll put the link in the notes. So I got to do a little only tens spiel for them as part of the summit, and I'm really grateful for that. But we got to talking about life hacks, about productivity, about how to do more with less. And I found that Demir and I and Carey are kindred spirits, that we come at it from different directions, but we're all here for the same aim. Demir, thanks for being here.
Really stoked to be here. We've had a little bit of conversation already behind the scenes. We've talked to you in the summit. So I'm ready to dig into it.
So I told Demir that when he uses the word hack, that it kind of leaves me cold because, productivity for productivity's sake, to me, is just basically getting nowhere faster. And what we realized together is Demir is really a lover of life. And the whole point of being more productive and doing more with less is being able to live better. Would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, this is common sense, but let's say it. If you're efficient but not effective, it's like swimming. It's like being Michael Phelps, like being the most amazing swimmer in the world. But if you're swimming away from shore, it doesn't matter. Eventually, you're going to die. You could be Michael Phelps. You could be the best swimmer in the world. If you're swimming in the wrong direction, you are heading for death. And so I think productivity without effectiveness and a real clear vision of where you're going can be counterproductive. Another analogy I like to use, it's like shooting yourself out of a cannon. Are you shooting yourself in the right direction? Because you might just land 5-10 years later in a life that you really don't want to be in and you didn't intentionally design, but you pretty effectively and efficiently got yourself there.
I'm sure nobody relates to that. So tell me your origin story. How did you get here?
Yeah, so I'm an insecure overachiever. And although many people won't like to admit it, most of us are. An insecure overachiever is the kind of person who learned to perform for love at a very young age. And it worked for me, right? I got the good grades. I went to the good schools, right? I learned how to work the system, get the grades, go to the school, do the stuff. And I found myself, fast forward, with a lot of amazing bullet points on my resume, 250 pounds, which for me is about 70 pounds overweight, with a chronic stress-related illness that was getting worse and worse and worse. So basically a life that everybody envied from the outside and I hated from the inside.
So I'm sure nobody can relate to that.
Nobody can relate to that. Nobody here can.
So you said something that I haven't heard before in quite that way, is performance for love. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, our parents were not hurting us when they taught us to perform for love, but there's a dark side of saying, hey, I'll give you love and affection when you get A's. I'll give you love and affection if you make the team, if you get the homecoming, right? Whatever it is, that creates this sort of like chronic need to perform in order to feel worthy.
And then the flip side is I was just coaching a really successful lawyer who his parents said, if you don't get good grades, you will be homeless and on the street. So there's the flip side of performing for love and safety and all that stuff. So it's those bastardized drives that you're talking about when you say perform for love.
And in the gray area, it's hard to discern where that's bad. So let's take it all the way out to the very clear black and white. You get CEOs who are constantly meddling and they're not creating systems and letting things operate. Why? Because they can't sit still. Why? Because they learned at a very young age that if they're sitting still, they're unworthy and there's something wrong with them, right? You have to constantly be working, and not just working unpleasantly hard. So that we come into adulthood with this almost sick, I call it the New York mentality, but truly it's everywhere. It's not just New York, but this idea that we're wearing our misery as a badge of pride. Well, I'm working so much that I busted a gut. I'm working so much I never get to see my kids. Well, I'm working so much that, I'm overweight, right? We're showing each other as a badge of pride how busy we are because we learned it at a very young age that's how to get love. That's how to get approval.
And if we didn't learn it then, we're learning it now because we have the hustle and grind kings telling us, while you're sleeping at 2:00 in the morning, somebody's eating
somebody else. Somebody's eating your lunch. Exactly. And so back to my origin story, I was, I can tell you some of the bullet points that are the shiny armor, right? Like I was one of the youngest advisors to a governor in the history of the United States. I was one of the youngest senior analysts on Wall Street, blah, 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 right? But behind that, I hated Wall Street. The funny thing about me is I didn't belong on Wall Street at all. I have a personality where I want to mentor, I want to teach, I want to educate. I truly, if left to my own devices, would have wanted to be a high school teacher. But I also have a massive ego. I'm talking about a massive ego. And my ego told me that the most important people in the world work on Wall Street. Therefore, I need to work on Wall Street. So I literally went into a career that I had no business being in and succeeded at a high level, even though I hated it the whole time because my ego told me that I needed to go be at the big boys table and eat lunch with the big boys, right? And I forced myself into that place for a long time. And then after that, instead of learning that lesson, I went even bigger and started my own company and raised $1.5 million and started a tech company. And I just could not stop myself. And thank God my body stopped me. So I honestly—
I hear that a lot from women, right? I hear that a lot, adrenal fatigue, all that stuff. Very rarely do I hear it from dudes. So it's really good for you to share that.
Oh my goodness. I would love to say that I had some kind of religious experience or I had a realization where the clouds parted and I just decided to be a better person. Nope. I would still be on Wall Street right now, except that in October of 2013, my gut exploded, essentially. I mean, that's not really a scientific term for it, but I had 3 surgeries on my stomach in 1 month. And my doctor told me that, hey, you can keep working, but you need to work less than 40 hours a week. And for those of you who know, high-paced careers, that's like telling a basketball player, you can still play in the NBA, but you can only play with one hand. It's basically the same as saying you can't play anymore. And I was forced to either quit my job or think about how I could do my job in a completely radically different way. And within 2 months, I went from working 80 hours a week to 2 hours a week. And I want to repeat that because it sounds so crazy that people can't even believe it. I went from working 80 hours every single week to 2 hours every single week. And the process was, it wasn't simple, but at its core, it was me reconceptualizing who I was inside of my job, not thinking of myself as being valuable because I was busy, hiring people, a guy in China and 2 guys in India to do essentially what was most of my job, and really becoming a project manager inside of my job and evaluating the quality. And I thought maybe that would take me 40 hours a month, and it really only took me about 8 hours a month to do. And actually the first thing that I had to do was suck all of the ego and self-importance out of my work, because I realized that a big part of it was like, oh no, only I can do this. I'm so special, I'm so important, only I can do this special and important work. And when I finally was able to take the ego hit to recognize that, no, actually a 24-year-old kid in India can actually do my job if I give them the right instructions to do it. It was, obviously I got a big payoff from it because I didn't have to do that work anymore, but I also took a big ego hit because now all of a sudden I recognized that a lot of the work that I did wasn't as important as I wanted to believe that it was.
And how did you deal with the fact that they may not have done it the way you wanted it done, as good as you wanted it done, or sometimes they would drop the ball? That's the fear I hear all the time when I try and get people to delegate.
Well, now we're getting nerdy. So let me jump down to the real bricks and mortars for a second. When you give somebody a written set of instructions, now let me pause and double back. I would suggest that, sorry, that's my dog. Gaia, afuera.
Dogs are totally welcome on this podcast.
Dogs. She came in here with her chew toy and started, and I could just hear the rest of the podcast being. So just doubling back, I stepped up to a new standard of management for the people underneath me. And the new standard was this, and I offer it to everybody. Are you giving people instructions that are so clear that somebody of average intelligence having a really bad day can still get it right 100% of the time?
Oh, that's so good.
Are you stepping up to the level of being a manager who gives people instructions that are so clear that a person of average intelligence having a really bad day can still get it done 100% of the time? And then when we ask ourselves that question, we recognize 90% of the time we're falling short of that standard, right?
No,
Now,
it's too much work. The argument would be it's easier to do it myself than to take the forethought and the time to plan, to teach, to mentor, and to set things up properly.
Well, I call it the 30-hour rule, right? The 30-hour rule is if you take something that is only costing you 1 hour a week, right? And then you multiply that out by, let's say, 48 weeks, you're not working all 52 weeks of the year, but 48 weeks out of the year, you're doing this thing, right? That's 48 hours that it costs you annually. Now, you'll probably be doing that thing for 5 years, so you can multiply that by as many years as you'll continue doing that task, right? But let's just take it across 1 year, right? If it costs you 30 hours to devise a set of instructions and processes to get that off your plate, you're ROI positive on that time investment in year 1, right? But we don't think about it like that. We think, oh, it just takes me an hour. Right. It's going to take me longer, right? The funny thing is, when you apply yourself, it will not take you 30 hours to systematize that thing. It will not take you. It will take you maximum 4 or 5 hours, and you will be massively 10x ROI profitable on your time. The problem is that we're playing defense so much. We're so on the defense that we can never string together 2 or 3 or 4 hours to actually sit down and start systematizing our life. And that takes us into a whole different bucket. I'm not going to take
well, that takes it into the council that, so the people that I generally work with are senior executives. And I try to get through their head that their job is to spend 2 hours thinking strategy, thinking systematizing, thinking how do I teach the people to do what they need to do, that's actually their job, to sit in a coffee shop and figure these things out, set direction, et cetera, and so forth.
I talk about SOPs, right? We have about 500 SOPs in our business. And again, really quick tip that I know after 10 years, and I can just literally download for everybody listening right now in a second. When you give somebody a written set of instructions, I promise you, and you run it 100 times, that person will probably get it right about 60% of the time, right? And so just with a written checklist or set of instruction, you'll probably get about 60 to 70% success rate on a written set of instructions. Now let's imagine you did it as a video, either a video on your iPhone or even like a screencast. I'm not sure how savvy people are to screencast, but it's just where you broadcast what's on your screen with your voice. It's just you walking through what's on your screen. That will give you about an 80, 85% success rate. When you combine a written set of instructions with a screencast, it jumps all the way up to 96. I'm going to say that one more time because it's so important. When you give somebody a written set of instructions and accompany it with a video of somebody actually following those instructions to the T and doing it perfectly, you will get a 96% success rate. You can never get to 100%, but 96 from where you're at right now probably feels like 100, right? And so for me, there's nothing more boring in the world than creating an SOP. It is the slow, methodical work of Mark Silverman saying, well, how do I really do this? Because the truth is that Mark Silverman is so good at doing something. He's not going A, B, C, D, E, F, G. He's skipping from A to D to G. And so for him to create a written and video set of instructions so that somebody of average intelligence can do it perfectly every single time, he needs to actually slow his thought process down and go, what's A, what's B, what's C? Do I still need step C in here? Actually, no. Step C is irrelevant. I just haven't revisited this process for a while. And that is the most tedious, boring work in the world, and is exactly what a manager should be doing.
So what you're basically saying is this is how you go from conscious competency to mastery. Conscious competency, where you're so good you can do something kind of without even thinking about it, to where you're actually now thinking about it so that you can teach it, you can pass it on.
And not just that you can teach it, but you're teaching it in a tangible, archivable way that you can pass on. Let me give you an example, right? Like an SOP, we have like all of these SOPs, and we lost somebody recently who was a linchpin of our business. And I'm sure everybody can relate to this feeling of losing somebody in your team who's a linchpin, right? And you just think, all types of expletives start coming out, and you just think, this is the last thing I need. We let this person go with a bon voyage. We had a huge party, and the person who replaced them was completely doing the same level of work within 2 weeks. Why? Because every single thing that person had done was in written and video format. They were able to step right in. It took them a little bit longer to do because sometimes they go back and rewatch the video or reread the instructions, maybe ask a question here or there. But I virtually did no onboarding for that new person. Now they're our new linchpin. So we have 0 man risk in our company and in our team because every single person is taking what they know and taking it out of their head and putting it into a written and a video SOP.
Got it. So when you talk about screencasting, which software do you use?
So we have a really cool video on our YouTube page. So it's free. It's on our YouTube page. It's called How to Screencast with Zoom. I don't know if you can link to it in your show notes, but
I will link to it because I use what do I use? I use Loom to do screencasting.
Yeah.
But it's
Zoom,
the same. It's basically the same thing.
It's not, in the sense that I think Zoom has better features than Loom, right? I mean, Loom has a couple things that I could get into that are a little bit better, but Zoom is free and Loom is not. So the first thing is, like, when you're getting somebody to invest in screencasting, it's always easy to get them to try a free tool. So, check out our YouTube page. The video is called
I'll put that link in there. I just took you down a rabbit hole. So I want to go back to your origin story. So you figured this out for yourself, and you started, that's how the, Only Tens came, because I was just dying, and my ADD was killing me, and I wasn't getting anything done, right? So the whole, what's on my list that absolutely shouldn't be on my list, right? That was the crux of that for me, and it became a best-selling book because I experimented on me. So you started experimenting and developing this for yourself. Now, what made you switch from being a tech CEO working 2 hours a week to now really caring about bringing this to the world?
Well, I can laugh about this now because I've drained some of my ego out of it, but I've actually got the worst sense of making money in the world. When I say to myself, Mark, wow, this thing's going to be a surefire moneymaker, I can promise you it's not going to make any money at all, right? So my instinct for what's going to be a moneymaker. However, thank God, when I think something's going to make no money, but I'm just super passionate about it, that actually ends up being, ironically, quite the moneymaker. So I've learned to sort of shut off the part of my brain that's like, let's just do this just for money. This is going to be a quick buck. We're going to make a fortune off of this. And I've turned on the part of my brain that was like, what am I passionate about? And so when I failed out of Wall Street, when I failed out of technology, I actually fortunately asked myself, like, well, what am I really excited about? What can I do better than anybody else? And it was creating systems, getting more and more done with less and less. And so I said, well, and to myself, I said, nobody's going to pay me for this. There's no way anybody's ever going to pay me for this. This is just a nerdy thing that I'm obsessed with. And I just put it out there for the passion of it. And of course, because of my twisted sense of what could make money, it actually was a huge moneymaker and ended up being a completely different career that took me in a completely different direction. And now fast forward, my wife and I have been traveling all around the world for the last 5 years. I'm sitting in Colombia right now. We're just about to go to Greece with a bunch of couples for 2 weeks. And we're living that life that I never thought was possible. I work less than 30 hours a week. I take an hour-long nap every single day. I've got a business that's making way more money than I ever dreamed about making in Wall Street, which is a lot of money because I dream big in Wall Street. And so if you told me 10 years ago that I would have the life that I would have right now, I'd probably get offended and slap you in the face because I genuinely believed that it was not possible to work less and get more. I was stuck, like you and I talked about before we started. I was stuck in this idea that you're either a lazy, poor loser or an overworked, hustling, successful contributor. And there was no middle ground.
What a nice binary choice
Yeah, like both choices sucked. But I believed that I was making the less of the two sucky choices. And it wasn't until I was forced through my health to explore another way of living that I was like, no, that you can actually do meaningful work and contribute in a big way and even get big rewards, not necessarily with a free ride or by pretending it, but by working, again, a lot smarter than you're working harder and draining a lot of the ego and a lot of the hustle and a lot of the sort of insecure overachiever out of it, and actually just getting to the core of the value that you provide to people.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to get people to identify in here. So, if I was listening, I would identify with your origin story. I would identify with the stress of Wall Street, with the stress of the tech industry, especially since I come from the tech industry. I would also identify with the need to do things differently. The stress is killing me. I can't do things the way I was doing it. Can't compete the way Michael Jordan couldn't compete the same way all through his career. We can't compete the same way. And if we're not going to leave the rat race, if we're not going to leave our jobs. So, my listeners often have elderly parents that they take care of, or they have children who are going to college. They have bills to pay. They're not going to go off to Greece and into Colombia and do all those things. They're going to stay in their goddamn job, right? And they're going to pay their bills. But it's really interesting to the thought of doing it differently, of slowing down. And then for what I see is the nervous system dealing with the fact that you actually did delegate. You have all this free time. And to me, one of the things I find most scary, people find most scary, is the blank white canvas. All right, I got everything off my plate. Now, all I have to do, I don't have to do much of anything. Now I have the blank canvas to go create. And that is so frightening that I will create problems to go solve problems. I will create distractions to keep my mind busy, or I will go find things to do rather than sit there and look at the blank canvas and create something out of nothing.
Well, that's bad. Can I add one thing that's so bad? I actually have a policy that's a little bit controversial. I will not work with a tech CEO. I won't do it. I will not take their money. And here's why. Because I've had so many tech CEOs that were working 80 hours a week, and I find a way to get them down to 40, 50 hours a week, something manageable so they can go coach their kids' baseball team and be a husband, and they will just put 40 more hours of work into that gap, right? They are bound and determined. And actually, it hurts them because now I've shown them how to get 120 hours a week into an 80-hour week, and they're actually they're on a faster path to burnout and blow up. And so I will only work with people that I think have a serious of intention to kick ass at work, but actually go home and be a human being.
Thank you. See, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. That's why I loved the thought of having you on this podcast. So let's talk about the summit that's coming up in June. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about our mission, because the summit mission sort of branches off of that. Our mission is we're productivity for freedom seekers, right? So we just want to help people get focused, get organized, and get freedom. Freedom could mean traveling to Colombia like I do. Most of the time with my clients, freedom means coaching their kids' baseball team, right? Freedom means 2 hours on a Saturday to themselves to read a book, right? Freedom can be smaller and yet just as meaningful, right? So that's our passion. That's our mission, is showing people how to use productivity as a positive tool, not a negative tool in their life, right? As an extension of that mission, at once a year, we put on the Lifehack Summit, where we bring together other like-minded thought leaders in the space. And we all sort of collectively pull out our megaphones and try to shout into the ears of people and say, hey, it doesn't need to mean you moving to Greece, but it can still be different. There can still be freedom that you engineer into your life. You still have ways that you can think about this differently and operate differently. And so what we do is usually bring together 20 or 30 of the biggest thought leaders in the space, and we bring them together around a central topic. This year, the topic is, how do I design a life that works on every level? So if you think about life like a Rubik's Cube, some of us have the career side all dialed in, right? But then if you look at the other sides, if you look at family, if you look at health, if you look at all these other sides, we haven't solved it. And we know that that's not solving the Rubik's Cube. You cannot say that you've solved it if you've really just solved one side and the rest looks like a mess. And so the question that all of these experts are tackling from different angles is, how do I design a life that solves the Rubik's Cube on every level? And it's a challenging question. It's probably one of the deepest questions you can answer or you can ask, because it really gets into, how do I live my life? Right? What's a strategy for living my life? And so you get to hear 20 or 30 of the world's top thought leaders tackle one of the hardest questions that probably most of the people listening here are tackling.
Which I'm one of them, by the way. So if you want, 129th or 130th of your summit to be Mark Silverman, please go listen. So I will. It was
a great interview.
Tell them how they can find you, and then I will put the link in the show notes.
So the link in the show notes would be the easiest way. It's just going to take you straight to the Lifehack Summit. If you just happen to be driving in your car or exercising in the gym, you can Google Lifehack Summit on your phone. Just say Lifehack Summit or Lifehack Summit 2019, and it'll take you right to a sign-up page. It's free. Just to be clear, there's no charge for it. We bring this as a function of our mission, and so it's something that you guys get to enjoy. I personally don't have the time, or I'm traveling and I can't make a 3-day in-person summit. So we've brought all of those people to you. These are the same people you'd be paying $1,000 on a 3-day summit, except it's digital, so we can bring it cheaper, so we can bring it free to you.
And I saw the list of people on the, a good portion of the list, and for you to bring these people together, the wisdom that they're going to impart for free is, for people who want to proactively create their lives, who want to stop just running for running's sake and want to actually create their world. This is absolutely gold, and I'm thrilled to bring it to the world with you. So, Demir, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
And we will put everything in the show notes so you don't even have to think about it. And really, any final words, man?
Change is possible. I've worked with so many people. When they come to me, I'm the last. They've tried everything. They've read the books. They've done all the coaching. They come to me as like a last-ditch Hail Mary effort. And every single time we're able to show them ways that they can rearrange their life, ways that they can engineer their environment to make significant change and create freedom. So even if you never work with me and we never meet in person, I just want you to receive this message that you get to be in ownership of your life, and you can always re-engineer your life in a way where you can create more freedom and more opportunity.
It's so funny because I think everybody is an alcoholic and an addict, and they only go into a program when they hit bottom, right? And when it hurts too much, when your stomach is tearing apart, that's when you figure out how to do something differently. That's when you're willing to take your hands off the wheel and to evolve and to learn to do something differently. Dude, thank you so much for the wisdom. My best to your beautiful wife, Carey, and good luck with the summit. To everybody else, thank you for spending your time with us. I love you, and have a great rest of the day.